friends, and welcome to the School Librarian Learning Network podcast. I'm Steve Tatro, also known as Dr. T Loves Books, and I love talking about all things related to school libraries. I may be an old dog, but I'm always trying to learn new tricks. In each episode of the SLLN podcast, I'll chat with a school librarian about a lesson they love. Hopefully, this can be a place for school librarians to get ideas and find new ways to engage with their students and staff. As a good friend likes to say, we're better together. So I hope this podcast will help school librarians connect with and learn from each other. The opinions and ideas shared in this podcast by myself and my guests are our own and do not reflect those of our school districts. And because school librarians always strive to be good digital citizens, I cite sources when using material that is not my own. Without further ado, let's get to this week's episode. Hey everybody, we're back, and I am excited. I get to talk to Katie Capshaw today. I have been looking forward to this conversation for a while, so I'm really can't wait to get into it. But Katie, I know that not everybody may be familiar with who you are, so why don't you take a second, tell us a little bit about who you are, where you are, what you do.
Sure. My name is Katie Capshaw, like you said. I am a middle school librarian in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, which is the direct center of the state of Tennessee. Very exciting. And I have been a librarian for 10 years. And I also I'm the past president of the Tennessee Association of School Librarians. So I was president in 2022.
Nice.
So that's what I am. That's what I do.
Awesome. Love it. So you're in school librarianship. What was your path to the school library? How'd you end up there?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. I was a teacher. I went to college to be a teacher, elementary education. I graduated in a different century.
Me too.
When things were very different. I actually didn't teach for the first few years because back then it was hard to get a job in elementary education. Especially I grew up in a college town a little bit east of here where I live currently, and everybody stayed after graduation. So there were like 50 to 100 applicants for every teaching job.
Wow.
Not the way things are today.
Yeah.
But that's how it was back then.
Huh.
So I did a few other things. I tutored. I worked at a tutoring company as a director. I was a church secretary for a little while. And then I ended up teaching when we moved to South Georgia, and I taught middle school ELA and social studies for 6 years.
Wow.
In Southwest Georgia in a little tiny town called Cairo, Georgia, spelled like Cairo, Egypt, but they definitely say Cairo. Home of the syrup makers. That was their high school mascot. Yeah, true story.
Okay.
It's very interesting. And so I taught there. It was very different from how I grew up. It was 75% minority, about 80% free and reduced lunch. I grew up mostly in a white southern town and middle class mostly, So that was really different. And I learned a lot and I grew a lot, and it was really hard sometimes, but it was a good place. It was challenging, but I learned about year 4 that I wasn't really cut out to be a teacher. I was like, classroom teacher is hard and not as much fun as I thought it would be.
Yeah.
And by then I was married and I had 2 kids, and it was just getting to be a lot. So my instructional coach locked me into a room with her one day. I think maybe the door wasn't locked, but I felt like it was. Wanted me to help her write a grant. I guess because I was a writing teacher, she decided I was a good writer. Maybe I had written some good emails. I have no idea. I've never written a book before or anything, but she's like, "You're a great writer." And I was like, "Yeah, okay." And so we wrote this grant. And in the process of writing the grant, I found out that the librarian was supposed to be over technology and the books. I was supposed to be this innovative person bringing all these innovative things. Well, our librarian at our school, bless her heart, as we say here in the South, was pretty up there in years and had been a librarian for 50 years. Yeah. And so she wasn't even really qualified. And you know what I mean? So, and it was just not a place that anyone wanted to go. So if she had been on top of things and a place where people had went, I wouldn't say anything about her age. It wasn't really her age. It was just her. Like, she just did what she knew, which wasn't a lot.
Yeah.
So I was shocked to find that out, and not really having thought much about a school librarian when I was in high school, we had to do one of those like personality career tests.
Yeah.
And I remember my homeroom teacher bringing us up one at a time. And she was like, yours says you should be a teacher or a librarian. She was like, you should be a librarian. That's a great job. And I thought, that sounds like the most boring thing ever. What are you talking about? I mean, I like to read and I go to the library, but yuck. Of course, I was all of 17, you know. And so I forgot all about that until I came back full circle and I was like, oh my gosh, she told me I should be a librarian. I should have listened. So in finding that out while I was in this locked room with this instructional coach trying to write this grant, I was like, are you serious? Is this what the librarian's supposed to do? Because I was searching, it was 2009 or 10, and I was searching for new technology, or I was still, like when I first started, I was still using an overhead projector with a marker. You know, I come home with like marker on my hand. And we just got projectors in our classroom, and we all had a teacher desktop. Like that was, and there was 2 computer labs. That was what was happening. And in the meantime, the iPhone had come out, you know, or had just come out, like, you know, iPads were like things were happening in the world, but not in our little rural school in Georgia.
Well, and I'm in a pretty decent district, and when around that same time, I could be a little bit off, but around that same time, we had cows, computers on wheels. Which we had like the gigantic 32-inch tube televisions hooked up to like some kind of a laptop or a desktop, and you had to haul this monstrosity into your room and plug it in, and like there was maybe one per hallway, so you had to share with everyone.
Share it.
It was insane. So yeah, I hear you on the maybe not as up to date on the technology stuff.
We had this laptop cart that was ginormous, and it had these laptops that had Windows 95 on them.
Nice.
And you would power them up, and by the time they got powered up and you could log in, it was time to go to the next class. So I was like, why are these here? You know. So through this process, I'm making a short story long here. I was like, wow, that sounds great. And some other people I had learned about, had gone through a program at Georgia Southern University. It was all online, which was a whole new thing for me, going to school online.
Yeah.
Weird. And I talked to my principal and I was like, hey, so if I start this program, would you consider me when our friend in the library retires? And he was like, oh yeah, I would definitely consider you. 100%, you should do that. And in Georgia, they were about to pass a law where your upper degree wouldn't count for a raise unless you were doing that position. So if I got the library degree, I wouldn't get a raise unless I was a librarian.
Okay.
And so if I started right then in 2011, 2011, then, or 2012, something like 2011, I think, then I could be grandfathered in.
Okay.
And so even if I didn't get the job, so I was like, well, I got to do this now because it was about to run out. So I started my program then, ended up having a baby in the middle of it, baby number 3, you know, but it was fun. My degree is actually in instructional technology with an emphasis in library media.
Nice.
Which is weird in Tennessee. They don't do that here, but in other states they do, because in Georgia, I was supposed to be over both. So my love of technology and my love of you being a library user and reading books, and really the key was I wanted to help teachers because there was no one to help us find these new web 2.0 tools were a big thing. And, you know, Prezi was coming out, you know, whatever that is. And all those things were starting to happen. And we were so far behind in the education world. And so that's kind of what jumped off. I wrote a grant while I was teaching. I got iPads. I went to big conference and learned all about this stuff. So I was really excited. My motivation was help students, help teachers. What a great job this must be.
Yeah.
So I ended up not getting the job at the school. They did kind of force her into retirement, but a teacher that had been there before had been a librarian for several years and wanted to come back to our school, and no one realized that she wanted to do that. But she got the job, but we ended up moving a couple of years later to, about a year later, to North Carolina, and I got my first library job there.
Excellent.
I was an elementary librarian at a really fancy school right by the racetracks. The Charlotte Motor Speedway was like in our backyard.
Oh, okay.
And like Stuart Haas Racing was there, and Hendricks Motorsports. And I ended up writing with our tech facilitator an $81,000 grant to the Jimmy Johnson Foundation for Makerspace, because that was a brand new thing no one had ever heard of. And we won.
Nice. Wow.
Yeah. So we got all kinds of stuff. And then we moved the next year to Tennessee. So there's that. And then I was elementary here for about a year and a half. And then I moved, a middle school job came open, and middle school is my jam.
Yeah.
Even when I was in school and it was elementary was 1 through 8 or K through 8, I still preferred that 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 grade levels. Kindergartners terrifying me.
Oh, I can't even imagine. No.
When they came into the library, I was just shaking in my boots. The first day they dropped kindergartners off, my EA, my assistant, just sat at her desk. She knew I never taught a kindergartner in my life, and just laughed at me. I mean, they don't know how to sit down on the carpet. It's like they're speaking a different language. And they were all English speakers,
Uh-huh.
And they had been to like preschool, I was pretty sure, and then they were sad because they just left their mom and got dropped off with this teacher. And then she's going to drop them off in another place. It was wild. So I ended up at middle school, and I've been there ever since, about 7 years. Middle school is, I think, where I belong with the weird kids.
Yeah. I'm totally with you on that. I started in high school, and I was working with like juniors and seniors my first year and a half, and it was fine. I moved, got a middle school job because I needed a job, but just fell in love with it. Like, I've had the opportunity to move to high school several times, and it's once in a while I'll teach like a 9th grade class, and I don't know, like there's pros and cons, but middle school is just so, what I love about them is they're still in that stage where things can be fun and interesting, and they're not all like too cool for school necessarily.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's my own personal bias, but they're definitely still a handful.
Oh my goodness. Everyone's like, why do you work with middle schoolers? That's terrifying. And I'm like, well, if you understand that they're like their worst self. So think about yourself at 12, 13. Were you a great person? And they're like, no. I'm like, there you go.
Yeah.
So if you realize that they're only going to get better from there, and maybe you can help them, that's all you need to remember.
That's
and when
it.
they do crazy things, you're just like, that's on brand.
Yep, it sure is.
You're like, Tiffany Toilet, Ohio Riz.
God,
Yep,
no.
that's you.
God.
I don't know what it means,
Yeah.
but it definitely defines you.
Yep. Alpha Sigma.
Right? Yeah.
God.
Whatever.
So I want to jump back for just a second before we dive into the lesson. But
Sure.
when you were giving us your story of progression into the library, you had mentioned how, like, when you were originally given that aptitude test and told, oh, librarian, you kind of went like, oh, that's boring. I don't know. And thinking of, like, even when you started to learn about, oh, library is supposed to be in charge of technology too, like, I think that's so frequently so many people's experience, like not just educators, but, students who've been through schools, and now they're adults making policy and making decisions. And it's like, they maybe didn't have the strongest library program. And so they can't picture it in their heads. And it's so frustrating to know. I mean, we all know how important the school library program is, right?
Yeah.
And all the research and all the data. And it's like, if you were good data-driven decision makers, everybody would have school librarians. But
it's crazy because everyone you talk to, like, when you tell them you're a school librarian, I get nervous for just a second, because inevitably, like, 3 out of 5 have a horrible story about a library, right? Oh, my elementary school librarian was awful. She was so mean, or whatever. I am so funny. Like, when in school, in library school, and they would ask, like, what's been your experience with librarians? I don't remember.
Yeah.
I don't remember my librarians at all. I think they were there.
Yeah.
I remember going to the library in elementary school. I remember going in middle school. I remember liking it. I remember going in high school. I remember them helping me find books I needed for class. I don't remember them teaching us lessons. I don't remember anything else.
No.
So, and I feel like probably most of my students, that's how they're going to be like, I don't remember you.
But I think that speaks to
that's part of the problem.
Yeah, exactly. But Anyway, we could talk about this all day, but instead we're going to focus on one of the other aspects that you brought up, which is the technology sort of angle that you are so interested in. Because I agree, like educational technology, incredibly important, and you are
Right.
here actually to share a lesson about some educational technology.
Not
So
crazy.
how nicely does this tie together? I love it. So why don't you tell us a little bit about where did this lesson come from, and then we'll kind of get into what it is and how it goes.
Well, to be perfectly honest, I was just trying to find something fun to teach my eighth graders
Mm.
because, in the second semester of eighth grade, they are too cool for school.
Mm-hmm.
And AI is becoming such a thing. And I've been to a couple of like PD sessions about AI. I've played around with some chat GPT. All of it is like blocked at our school.
Mm-hmm.
In our system, and they've introduced like magic school to us, the AI program. So I was digging into that. I went through the certification, whenever, all the sessions, so I'm a certified whatever
Nice.
magic school person. But it doesn't really have an aspect for the kids, so I've used it for myself. Like, I wrote a recommendation letter for another tearer, and I used it, and it was amazing. What a great letter. I was like, I couldn't have written that in that much time. And I've used it for some like applications and different project things that I've done, and thought it was great. Go
I've been
ahead.
having really good luck with it to write formulas and like short scripts for like automating stuff in Google
Right.
Docs and Google Sheets. Chat
Yeah.
GPT, I'll say, here's what I want it to do, and it'll spit it out. You throw it in your spreadsheet, and boom, does it. Like, it's great.
Yeah. I mean, it's so powerful
Mm.
and can be such a good tool. But I think teachers are afraid of it,
Mm-hmm.
and students just think of it as a way to cheat. And let's be honest, students since the beginning of time with a slate and a piece of chalk have been trying to figure out a way to cheat, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not new.
Yeah.
And teachers have been figuring out that kids have been cheating since that time too. So we're pretty
Mm-hmm.
smart on both sides. And so I was just like, I got to figure out a way to make this happen. And so, or to figure out what can help students. And somebody, I wish I could remember who it was, told me about school AI. I can't remember if I saw it somewhere. I really have no recollection, but someone wonderful told me about school AI. And so I just looked it up, and it is a tool for students and teachers. It's
Hmm.
both. It has a teacher side and it has a student side. And so I was talking with our technology department here at the central office, because I've learned you have to approve everything, make sure it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
When I was a younger teacher, I would have just done things and asked for anything later. But since I am going to expose the whole school and not just one class,
Yeah.
I figured that I should probably get permission. And they were like, "Oh yeah, we're testing it out at the high school level." Oh, I know. It was my instructional coach. She's the one that told me. One of my instructional coaches, they have an office in the library, and she said somebody is using this, because we were talking about AI. And I was like, "Cool, I'll check it out." So it's really cool. And so I thought, I need to figure out a way to teach my students how to be responsible with AI,
Mm-hmm.
and also give them a tool that they can use. And let's just, like, I hate when there's an elephant in the room and we don't address it.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never been one of those teachers that wanted to lie to my students. Like, if you don't pass this test, you're not going to the next grade. Like, we all know that's not true.
Yeah.
So why are we? Because then they're never going to trust me.
Yeah.
So when I say something that's true, they're not going to believe me. And like, a pet peeve of mine is being lied to. Even a little white lie, I just don't appreciate it. Just shoot straight with me. So if I'm not going to like it, I'm just going to have to get over it. So I'm not the kind of person that wants to just like make stuff up about, like, you're going to explode or you're going to go to jail or, all those things. Like, even when I teach copyright, I'm like, people, it is illegal. I'm like, but you're not going to jail.
Right.
But you could be sued.
Mm-hmm.
You probably won't be in school, but if you keep doing this as a habit, one day you might be.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just trying to shoot straight with them. So that was where it all came out of, something cool. I have just taught it to eighth graders, and it went really well. And so, yeah, that's where it came from.
Awesome. I love it. So let's walk through sort of how the lesson works. So it sounds like the students are coming to you rather than you going to them, like they're coming down to the library.
Yeah, the way that I work, I'm a flexible schedule. So I set my own schedule. I have 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. I have about 1,200 students.
That is a lot of students.
And this is, something that it's taken me several years to figure out a good method. So
Mhm.
what works best for me They come with their ELA teacher, their English teacher, because they're on a block for that. That's the
Gotcha.
only class. They have 90 minutes or two class periods. And
Okay.
so this works out well. We have 3 mini schools. Each mini school has 2 teachers. So one will come the first half of the block, one the second, for 3 days. So I see all the kids in that grade in 3 days. I usually do. So that gives me like Mondays and Fridays off, or it gives me not off, but 2
Right.
days a week where I can do library work or collaborate with a different subject.
Nice.
So that works out really well.
Yeah.
So I see like 8th grade. I usually start with 8th grade. 8th grade 1 week, 7th grade, 6th grade, then repeat. Occasionally, if it's like a short week or a holiday or something like that, we'll skip. And then every other time they come to see me. So they come to see me once every 3 weeks. They always check out books. And books are due every 3 weeks. It just works out nice. Every other time they come to visit me, I'll teach them a lesson of some sort, either in collaboration with a teacher or just something. Usually I teach a lot of research stuff. You know, we have a lot of free databases with the Tennessee Electronic Library. So 6th, 7th, and 8th, we do just different lessons. Sometimes I'll do book tastings. I did book tasting musical chairs with my 6th and 7th graders. That was fun. And so with my 8th graders, I needed something different because I knew that that chaos would reign if we tried to do musical chairs. And we had done a book tasting traditionally the year before. So I was just looking for something different. So they come to me. That was a long answer.
No.
They come to me in the library.
Gotcha. That's a really interesting schedule too. Like it's flexible, but it's almost sort of like a fixed flex in that you've got that regular route. That's really,
Yeah. So I'm completely flexible. I set that, but that's what I like. And it works best for my teachers.
Yeah.
So on the week I'm not teaching a lesson, they can just come check out. They can send them a few at a time. And towards the end, a lot of teachers were doing that. Or I have a lot of games and makerspace and stuff. So a lot of times they'll just come and let the kids do whatever.
Sure.
And the students just know, like, if they don't behave, then I'll just ask the class to leave and they don't want to leave. So.
Yeah. That's awesome. I'm envious. I'm gonna have to think about if I can set something up like that with my teachers. That's really cool.
Yeah, I got that whole schedule from another friend across town because I just had been begging teachers and trying to come up with different ways. And I didn't want to take up all of their time because they're a tested subject, you know.
Right.
But they tend to really the school I'm at now really loves to come to the library, and the teachers love to bring them. So
that's
it works
awesome.
out really well.
Yeah. So the 8th graders are coming in, and I assume that they're bringing devices with them that they're gonna.
Right, we're 1-to-1.
Okay.
And I'm in charge of that. Yay! So because we use Follett Destiny, library manager, then our district, when we went 1-to-1 during COVID, they bought Resource Manager. So because the librarians know how to check out books, they assumed we could check out laptops and do inventory of both. And then somehow we also became the Tech Help Center.
Surprise, surprise. It's always the other duties as assigned that I always find interesting.
Yeah. So I asked ahead of time, and I reminded the teachers every day, the teachers that were coming the next day, just a reminder, because I've been a teacher and barely remembered my name sometimes. So just reminded them laptops and library books.
So they come wandering in, they've got their laptops. What are they to start the lesson off? What are they gonna see? Or are you gonna do class instruction, individual? How does it go?
So we do class instruction. We'll collect their books to return, and my EA will check those in. And then they have a seat. We have kind of 2 big spaces in the library. One is kind of the makerspace fun side. We have some soft furniture and stuff on that side. And the other side is just tables and chairs. I have a smart board over there. And so that's the classroom side. And we have we have doors on either side, and we have a closet with snacks for teachers. They have to pay for them. So we have a lot of coming and going in the library a lot. And I found when I was on that side where the main door was, that every time someone walked in, we all had to acknowledge them. And if it was the famous teacher, we all had to stop and wave. So we kind of moved to the smaller side, and there's less distraction. So they come in, they have a seat. And then the lesson starts. I just start with the Common Sense Media is where I got this lesson from. And it's for the 6 through 8. I'm a Common Sense Media teacher. So I went through that program.
Nice. I didn't even
And
realize they had a teacher program.
yeah, so you just go and sit through several webinars, and then you become a certified Common Sense Media teacher. So it's in the 6 through 8 grade band. If you go to commonsensemedia.org under the For Educators, you can get a free account. And under the 6 through 8 grade band, and it actually is for 6 through 12, this lesson, but it's just called What is AI? And so in that, they have a slide presentation, they have a video, they even have a handout and some other things. I skipped the handout. The thing that I like about Common Sense Media and their slides is that it's in a PowerPoint. And so you can just take it, download it, and then you can change it.
Gotcha.
So I've used their stuff for a lot of things. And so I just adapted it. There's and so it on the board when they come in, it says, what is AI? The first slide. And so they're super excited about that.
Yeah.
They're like, so that I can hear them talking to each other, oh, it's the thing we use to cheat on our homework or whatever. It's going to take over the world. It's going to kill us all those things. The chatter was fun. And it even has like a learning outcome and all those kinds of things. So if you're going to be observed, you could, definitely use that. We kind of hop through that because I always like to be a good teacher and tell them where we're going with this.
Yeah.
And then there's a short video, and it's kind of an animated video, and it's about 1.5 minutes long, and it just kind of explains the difference between the 2 different types of AI. And if I say them now, I'll get them wrong because I taught that lesson a couple months ago.
That's okay.
The correct terms. And so it kind of goes through both of those. And so that was interesting, the difference between like an Alexa AI and then that ChatGPT AI.
Gotcha.
The generative AI, I'm pretty sure is the right word. And then the basic AI and just kind of what the difference is.
Okay.
And then it goes into just some discussion questions that are really good. There's some terminology, some vocabulary that we went through, which was all really good. And so we discussed, and then there was like a turn and talk discussion at your table about the pros and cons of generative AI. And then like why, not just it's going to take over the world and we're all going to die.
Yeah.
But why do you think that?
Yeah.
And then just really focusing on AI can do a lot of things, but it can only do what it's taught to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so we talk about any tool in the hands of the right person is going to do a good thing. And in the hands of someone with ill intent is going to do bad things. So I'm like, think about a hammer, right? A hammer is not good or bad. Well, I say, is a hammer good or bad? And they try to tell me good, and I'm like, it's not. It's just a tool. It doesn't have a moral compass.
Right.
But in the hands of someone good with good intentions, it's going to build a school. It's going to build a bookshelf. It's going to build things. In the hands of somebody with malicious intent, it could kill you. And then they're like, whoa, that went dark. And I'm like, I'm just trying to keep your attention, And I'm like, but true, or it could hurt you. Can tear things down. So same with social media. Same with AI, same with any kind of tool. And then I talk about how in the future, in the not too distant future, you're going to be adults, for they're 13, 14, some are 15. So in the next 3 to 5 years, you're going to be an adult and you're going to be making these decisions about where this technology goes. You're going to be the ones building it, using it. And so you need to make sure that you're doing it with good intentions and with good ethics.
Yeah.
So we kind of discussed that a little bit, just try to give them a lot of things to think about. And we had some really good discussions. Of course, we had some really, lame discussions. I mean, these kids do say skibbity toilet.
Yeah.
So it wasn't all beautiful, but there were some really good discussions and some really good insight from kids who don't always talk.
Nice.
Which is always nice.
Yeah. What I love too is in that turn and talk, when they're talking about like whether they think it's going to be good or bad, or what it might do, when you have them talk about the why and where do you get that information from,
right?
I could see that spinning into its own sort of a lesson on, let's talk about media and information literacy and where do we get our information, and can we trust what we see in movies and TV shows where we find out about this stuff. So I mean, not that you need to layer that on, but I could see that being a nice tie-in with a different lesson if you would do that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think it could be a good whole, like if there was a class on ethics or something like that, this could be, or if they were doing something about ethics in a particular class having a lesson, I think this would be really good.
Yeah.
It's a really good jumping off point, at least. And I know when they go to high school, which they were just a few months away from,
Mm-hmm.
this is going to be really tempting to use. So, and then we talk about how, yes, you can, because one of the questions is, how can you use AI? And so one of them's like, to do our article of the week. Like, they're confessing their sins in front of me and their teacher.
Yeah.
Sitting there too, because the teacher stays with them.
Not criminal
And I was like,
masterminds, the 8th graders.
and the teachers are like, and I said, okay, well, here's the deal. You could do that for sure. But what you need to understand is that your teacher has read your essays before, and they've read your articles of the week. They've read they know what you sound like. They know what an 8th grader sounds like. You have to read one 8th grade essay and you know what it sounds like.
Yeah.
And so they know if you're cheating. And number 2, there's software that does the reverse, where you can put a paper in and tell how much is plagiarized.
Yeah.
And that was shocking to them.
Huh.
They had no idea. And sometimes I think we give them more credit.
That's true.
They really don't know everything.
Oh, yeah, no. And they know so little about technology. Like, they've got this very shallow surface level understanding of so much technology. And yet we seem to imbue them with this mystical technology sense, which just is really not the case. But
no, they've just been using it a lot. They know how to click buttons and things.
Yeah.
So they were completely shocked by that part. And I said, most college professors will run your essay through this AI tool and see how much is plagiarized. And there's a certain percentage that you can go over, or you're going to get that grade. And they were like, whoa. And I was like, yeah. Like, and I'm not making stuff up.
Right.
Them, because I want them to believe me when the reality comes. And I was like, this is real.
Yeah.
And one was funny. We had a substitute in there in one class, and he was a college student, and he had already been out of school, and for the year. And he stopped me, which is fine. Like, I'm all about collaboration. Like, the teachers can talk. And he was like, listen, this is real. He was like, my teachers do this.
Yeah.
And he was like, and you need to know how to use this. And later on, he was like, that was a really good lesson. And I was like, thanks, man.
Appreciate it. Nice to hear from the peanut gallery. I just saw the coolest idea for, I'm going to say for catching kids that have been using AI to plagiarize. I saw somebody had posted online, having the kid read the piece when a parent and an administrator are there, and listen to the kids stumble through all the words they don't know and all the phrases that don't make sense to them because they don't understand what all this is. So, like, they can spit out this thing and they figure, oh, I'm going to turn it in. They're going to see it. It'll be marked great. But if they have to actually interact with the work, so transparent. So,
I mean, that's a good point too. If you needed to prove it, I feel like if you handed it over to the parent, they'd be like, there's no way my kid wrote this. I've seen his text messages.
Yeah, you would think. I
mean, but I know some parents, like, that's how I would be. I'm a parent of 3 kids, so I'm always, and a teacher, so I'm always suspicious of them. Like, I never believe them.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of parents are that way.
Yeah, unfortunately. But sorry, I keep sidetracking us, but this is such an interesting topic, and there's so much going on with it these days that it's hard not to digress.
We barely scratched the surface. I mean, this was like a 30-minute lesson tops, because I gotta wait for them to get in. I gotta make sure they can check out books. And so to kind of wrap it up, what we did is we went to School AI. So I had created a free account, and in that it creates a link. Very similar to like a PlayPosit or Nearpod, things like that. And so the kids don't have to have an account. They don't have to log in.
Nice.
So there is some really cool tools in the School AI for students. I'm going to click on it so I get this right.
Yeah.
And there's a thing called Spaces in School AI, Spaces. And when you go to Spaces, they have like a sidekick guy that's like your tutor for your kids. They have bell ringers, exit tickets, videos that you can find, and those are all for teachers. But then for kids, they have subject tutors, which is brand new. I just saw. And what I had found was the featured collections. So if you scroll a little bit farther down, if you go to the Spaces section of School AI, and it's History Comes to Life. And so what it is that they have generated these characters in history, and the kids can interact with them. And so what I had done is I picked a few, and I gave them the links to those, and we put them on my website because a lot of times they will launch off of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I showed them where to go on my website, and they could just click the link of the one they wanted to look. So there was like Martin Luther King, and it was, I think it was February or March. I think we had just finished up Black History Month. So that was interesting. I think it was February. And then I picked like Alexander the Great because they had learned about that. I picked like Winston Churchill, tried to figure out like what they were learning about in history class right then, American history, and picked a few of those. I think Sacagawea was one of them. And so then they picked one and they clicked on it, and then they interact with it. So they type the questions, and then the AI answers them as they are that character. And there's a feature where you can push play. So I asked them if they had headphones to bring them. Of course, they don't. Like one kid did.
Yeah.
And one teacher did actually have some and passed them out. So that was cool. But if they have headphones, they could play it in a voice that AI had generated to be like that person.
How cool.
So it was really cool. What the funny thing about it is I practiced with it a bunch, and I typed all kinds of horrible things in it to make sure that it was middle school proof, right? So I said all the bad words and all kinds of other things. And like, just any terrible thing you could think of that a middle schooler would ask.
Which is all the terrible things.
Which was all the terrible things, which we won't mention here, but everything I could think of. I typed it in there because regular Chat GPT is going to give you some answers to some questions that the children have. Okay. This one, it would just say, it seems like you're off topic. Why don't we, and then it will ask the question again, or it will say, I think I asked George Washington something really inappropriate about his wife, maybe. And he was like, that's a personal question that I'm not going to answer. So it was funny because it was me and like my assistant and some instructional coaches and like our tech guy. And I was like, all right, let's think of all the bad things we could think of that a middle schooler would ask. And I didn't say skippity toilet because that was new. I hadn't learned that yet. But so what it does, it's really interesting because it tries to get the kid to go down a path.
Okay.
The AI has an agenda. And what it's trying to do is get the student to like internally reflect about things. Like it really tries to get, because somebody was like, I feel like I'm in counseling. Like, is this a therapist? Because it's like when you ask it a question, you would ask Martin Luther King. Of course, they tried to ask him all kinds of horrible questions too, and it didn't play that game. But how did you feel about the way you were treated? And he would answer them in a very good answer, but then always ask a question back to the student. Like, how have you experienced prejudice in your life? Or, if Amelia Earhart, what was it like to be the first woman to do these things? And then she would say, what is something you've accomplished in your life? And it was really trying to get the students to like go down this reflective. I couldn't quite figure out where it was headed because it'll just keep going. Like I played around with it for a while and I was like, I don't think it's ever going to end. Now, when I kept asking it inappropriate questions, it finally was like, I think we're done. And I was like, okay.
That's wild.
But what you could do, because the kids caught on to that too, so I explained to them, you can follow their line of questioning and answer them, and they'll continue to lead you down this reflective, intrinsic path. Or you can change the subject and ask them a question. But it wasn't like, I thought it was just going to be like historical facts and stuff, but it's definitely trying to get them to like see whatever the great characteristic this character has in history. It's trying to get the student to see that in their own life.
That's really weird. Yeah.
Yeah, I like played with it for a while and I was like, where do you take it? What are you trying? What do you want to know about me? Why are you asking me all these things? What's the greatest thing I've accomplished? Why did I feel that way? Like, it does kind of feel like therapy.
That's interesting. I remember at some point reading about like some of the earlier computer programs, very, very basic, simple things, but they would do that same kind of a thing. They found that people would like write responses to a computer asking them, how are you doing? And a lot of people really engage with it in that way. I
always say thank you to my Alexa.
Yeah.
Doesn't care.
Yeah. I heard an interesting, I'll say opinion, I'm not even going to call it a debate, that said that we shouldn't get in the habit of thanking our technology because it's not a person. And therefore,
Right.
like we don't want to build the bad habit of treating inanimate objects like animate objects.
Humanizing it. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of go back and forth on that. I feel like good manners are good manners, but
Right.
maybe that's just me.
So the one thing I'll say, the one thing that was a little snafu was I signed up for a free account
Mhm.
and you can only have 150 interactions a day on
Okay.
those spaces. So what I found the first day was by about the 4th class, because I'll see 5 classes a day. About the 4th class, I ran out. And I
Gotcha.
was like, "What?" Because the kids were picking several. So they would pick one, and then they would be like, "Oh, I wanna talk to so and so." So I had to go back and be like, "Listen, I'm limited, and I need the end of the day kids to be able to do this, so
Yeah.
you can only pick one."
Hmm.
And after that, it worked out pretty good. I just kinda threatened them. So that's something I didn't realize. And I don't see 150 kids in a day, but really close to that many.
Gotcha.
So we were running pretty low by the end of the day.
Okay.
So that's a little
Yeah.
pro tip.
Good tip. Good to have in the hip pocket. So
Yeah.
it sounds like the kids were really engaged in this lesson and in learning about both having the discussions about AI and then getting to interact with these AI historical figures.
Right, and at the end of it, we asked them they were super into it, whether they were asking true questions or not, whether they were just trying to trip it up,
Mhm.
and at the end, I said, "How does this make you feel using this?" And they were like, there was a really strong feeling of they didn't like it.
Hmm.
They thought it was too creepy,
Interesting.
that they didn't like someone else impersonate, like, it was just too real for them.
Huh.
But a lot of kids thought it was really cool and a fun way to learn about history.
Oh yeah, I bet.
But yeah, I thought they would like it a lot more than they did, but it really freaked them out.
Huh. That's
For the
I
most,
would
like, I would say, like, probably it was probably like 60 to 70% were like, "Nope."
huh. I
And they
don't
were like, "It's cool, but it freaks me out." And I was like, "Okay." I thought it was really cool.
I don't think I would
But
have
I
caught that.
think that goes back to the fact that they don't quite understand how it's doing that. Like, it's only doing that because someone taught it to do that.
Right.
And so I think that's the mystical thing about AI is it's not gonna, like, we've seen so many movies where, I mean, like, we're at my house, we're currently in this summer, we're going through the, Marvel cinematic timeline, like, we're watching the timeline order.
Okay.
So it's Age of Ultron day, and so, like, we've seen those movies, right? Where it takes over, the AI takes over, and it's gonna destroy the world, and so I think
Mhm.
we think that's gonna happen. But really, AI can only do it does learn, which is kinda scary, but still, it has a programmer.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, so much of it is pattern recognition. So it's not even
Right,
necessarily like it seems a lot smarter than I think it really is. I think it's
right,
easy to kind of trick us into or trick people into thinking pattern recognition is more than it really is. But
yeah.
hmm,
So I recommend School AI, it's a really cool tool. I like Magic School as well. Magic School is all for teachers right now, but it has some really good things that you can use to do, and most school districts will approve you to use Magic School or School AI. So that's the other plus. But School AI has those things for teachers like lesson plan generators. I used it, like I said, to write a letter of recommendation, a bunch of other things, but also has the student one, and it keeps adding to it. Like I
hmm.
just saw they have like tutors.
Yeah, I'm
So
really
you could
curious about that.
actually, there's bell ringers you could assign to your students. I just would recommend playing around with it a lot to make sure that you know what it's gonna do.
Yeah. Before you turn it loose on the students. Yeah.
Yeah, and feel free to cuss at it and, like, ask it some really inappropriate questions and see what it does.
It's a good point. I mean, I don't know that I would have thought ahead enough to do that kind of prep, but that is an incredibly important part of
Yeah.
making sure these tools that are going to interact with the students are going to interact in a way that we feel is appropriate to the students.
Yeah, I was just like, "I've gotta see what this is gonna say," because I think because I'm over technology, and oftentimes they'll come to me and, like, I'll have seen the things or heard about the things that the students have done with the laptops that they get in trouble for. And our SRO officer, his office is in the library too. So we hear a lot of things there in the library. I'm kind of the gateway of lots of things happening. Sometimes kids will hang out in there while they're writing out what they did wrong, So I get a lot
Gotcha.
of experience. So I was just like, I have to know
Yeah.
before I hand this to kids. And
Yeah.
I'm sure that I've done some things where I've gotten learned before and
Oh
not done
yeah.
my prep and been like, oh yeah, I didn't know I was gonna do that.
Oh yeah. We all have that, at least that one bad day, if not multiple bad days, where it's like,
Right. Where you
why
didn't
did
watch
I
the video
not?
clip entirely before and then you're
Yep.
like, oh my gosh.
Yep. Been there, that's for sure. So it sounds like the students enjoyed the lesson. Did you get any kind of feedback from either the students or the teachers?
Yeah, I did. The teachers all said that was a really good lesson. They really thought it was super timely and important, and they appreciated that because they had just started having some real problems with kids using AI to do some of their work.
Okay.
And then the students all, I asked them, how was it? My son was in 8th grade at the time, and he's one of my students in my class. So he's always a good, litmus check. And so I was like, what'd you think? And I asked him beforehand. I had him like kind of interact with it ahead of time just to see how it would go. And he thought it was really cool. He was like, it was a good lesson, Mom. And then I think my greatest compliment was when the 5th graders that are going to come to our school next year, they came in to do a tour. The elementary school buses them over, and we have current students give them a tour. And so they come to the library, and I give them a little hello and a spiel. And the one girl was like, so Miss Capshaw, sometimes she teaches us lessons and sometimes we just check out, but like they're usually pretty good. Like she taught us about AI and it was really cool. And I was like,
nice.
when an 8th grade girl compliments you,
Unsolicited too.
Oh yeah, I hadn't said anything yet. I was just standing there waiting for her to let me talk, And I'm always like, when they want to give the tour, I'm like, you go ahead and hear what you say. And then I've had some girls. Last year was my first year at that school. I moved from across town because we moved across town, and my son was coming to the school I'm at now. And he said, he was a 6th grader at the time. He was like, Mom, please come be our librarian. It really needs help. And I was like, okay. And because they had a job opening. And so, and it worked out. It's closer to home. It's only 10 minutes away. But
Nice.
Last year when they were giving the tour, they were like, Miss Capshaw's done a lot of really good changes in here. It's really fun. And she has some really good books. And I was like, ooh. So anytime I can get a compliment, and even the boys, which are harder to win over in the library sometimes.
Yeah.
Not always. I have some really fabulous readers, but
awesome.
They did give me a lot of good feedback. And the fact that she remembered it like 2 months later was, I think, probably the coolest thing.
Oh, absolutely. Man, that's awesome. And it sounds like this is a lesson that would be pretty easy to differentiate for different ability levels or different language. I want to say I lost the word, but you know where I'm going. Yes, thank you. It seems like this would really fit in with a lot of different groups, a lot of different dynamics.
Yeah, so I see everybody in the school. So I have students. I had students that don't speak English. We have lots of students this year, especially that are fresh. Newcomers is what we call them. So, and they were able to interact with it. I think you can change the language, but a lot of them read the language better. And then sometimes they'll switch out their computer and their keyboard and stuff to be in Spanish. But, and then I have all kinds of levels. I have gifted students all the way down to special ed students.
Okay.
So we have autistic students, students with lower IQs. I didn't do it with like our structured intervention where they're, they stay in the same class all day, not them, but all kinds of learners that were able to do this lesson and enjoy it in their own way.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and you already gave us a tip on make sure you do a little testing to make sure it's going to do what you want it to do. Anything else that if somebody's going to try this for the first time, they should try and bear in mind as they're getting ready for this?
No, I would just say play around with it. Know the limit. There's a limit to how many interactions you can do in a day. I I went back and forth as to whether or not to pick just one person for them to interact with. And in the end, I just like choice. I
Yeah,
just like to give students options.
absolutely.
But it's 150. I thought when I first read it, it was 150 words per character, but it's just 150 interactions a day
Okay.
on your account.
And
So
interaction is the whole conversation?
just them opening it up at all.
Okay. So
And
then,
clicking on it and opening up that character.
but if they type something and the character responds back and they type something else, that's still only one interaction because it's
Correct.
just okay.
Yes.
Just wanted to make sure that I was clear on
No.
that. Okay.
Yes. Just the one time they open up the link. I guess you get
Gotcha.
like 150 hits on the links.
Okay.
total a
All right.
day.
That's good to know.
So I gave them probably like 8 options, which probably is overkill, but I'm just like, I like options. So
Well,
I guess
and
it's not the school librarian.
Well, I was looking at the page too, and there's 25 different historical figures there that each one of them looks like someone I would want to talk to. So
Right.
I can totally see wanting to give them some possibilities. That's really
Yeah.
great.
So I'm just trying to pick people that might be relevant and a few scientists and a few historical, just history people.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think that would be, I think it was a good way for them to just jump into something.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was trying to think of, how could they interact quickly?
Mm-hmm.
Because they only spent about 5 minutes doing it.
Okay.
Because by the time we got to that, and some of the classes move faster than others
Mm-hmm.
based on their, ability levels. And I can always tell, like, when one class has, because another teacher, there's an extra teacher in the room too,
Right.
but also because you can just tell by the pacing.
Yeah.
So they may not have gotten as much time. In some classes, maybe got a little bit more time. But in the end, it was about a 5-minute window
Okay.
that they would use it. And then, of course, those links just stayed up on my page.
Mm-hmm.
So they could go back. I just asked them not to go back until I was done with the lesson for the week.
Gotcha.
And then they could go back and play with it.
Nice. I might throw some
It
of
worked
those on
out.
my
The rest
page.
of the week, we didn't run out of
Awesome.
kids.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, I love this. I love this idea. I love this lesson. Thank you so much for coming to share it. We're going to now go in a completely different direction, and we're going to do our book break.
Book break. Squiggity.
So this can be any book you want, personal, professional, for students, for yourself, just for fun for the summer, whatever you like. So what's a book or two that you think people should have on their radar?
Okay, so of course I love to read books. I love middle grade books. They're so much fun. I've been trying really hard this year to read more grown-up books. And
Me
last year it was like I asked people to give me at the beginning of the year, give me books to read, and I picked 12, and it works out really well. I felt like such a grown-up. Because people would always ask me for book recommendations, and I was like, I only know middle grade books.
Yeah.
So now I have a few grown-up books in my pocket. But my middle grade book that I've really enjoyed this year is Hummingbird by Natalie Lloyd.
Okay.
It's a newer book, and it was on our Volunteer State Book Award list. It didn't win, but I wanted it to. It's a I love Natalie Lloyd, by the way. She's a Tennessean.
Okay.
And I love her books. But it's a book about a little girl who is in a wheelchair. And it is her story of finally convincing her parents, who are like these super cool, like hippie kind of people. Well, it's actually her mom and dad are divorced, but her stepdad is the gym teacher at the middle school in town.
Okay.
It's a little tiny town in Tennessee. And it's not a real town, but I feel like I live there, And so she finally convinces her parents who homeschooled her because she has brittle bone disease.
Yeah.
So that's why she mostly spends most of her time in a wheelchair. She can walk, but she easily breaks her things, like her legs. And so she spends most of her time in a wheelchair. And because I think she went to kindergarten one day and broke something, and so then her parents never let her go back to school. So she's somewhere in middle school, and she's convinced them to let her go to school, and sort of the adventures that happen. And then in the meantime, there's this magical thing happening in her town having to do with feathers flying in the sky, and this magical hummingbird who will grant your request if you can find it. And you can only find it if you are worthy. And so the town is being overrun with people coming to find this magical hummingbird, which comes every so often. And there's other people. teams up with she makes some friends, and they team up and try to go find it. And she learns about the history of herself, the history of her town, the history of her family, all through it. It's really fun and really heartwarming. And it's great for kids. It's really super middle grades appropriate, but also would build empathy for students who are, able. And if you didn't know a lot about, which I didn't know a lot about, Bertolt Bones, so that was really interesting too. So it was a great heartwarming read. A little bit of magic, or maybe not. Just a little bit of magic, and
I love that kind of a story that's got that, like, this may be happening or it may not be happening, and it's up to the reader to decide how real or magical they want it to be. Man.
Yeah, and Natalie does a really good job of all those things. So.
Okay. Definitely
and
getting that on the list.
Natalie, I'm pretty sure that she has some sort of disability herself. I can't remember exactly what it is.
Interesting.
A lot of the books revolve around that. So.
Okay. I worked with a student who has osteogenesis imperfecta a while back.
That's the word.
Yeah. I learned it because of him. So he was teaching me all about it. But yeah, he loved to skateboard and he wanted to play football. And I was like, dude, are you serious?
Wow.
But hey, he did his thing. So more power to him. But sorry, you were going to go and tell us another great book. What do you got?
The other great book I'll do really fast is a grown-up book that I read called The Women by Kristen Hanna. I've read several books by her. They're historical fiction. I love this book because it really brought to light, I think, a time in history that we don't know a lot about. The one I read before was a World War II book. Okay. They definitely took like a different spin on it. This is about women in the Vietnam War. So it's really interesting. It's about nurses who were in country. So they didn't see combat, but they saw a lot.
Yeah.
And then about half of the book is during the war, and about half of it is what happens after they come home. And it follows one nurse mainly in particular. There's a lot of things about PTSD and just, in general, the people coming back from Vietnam weren't welcomed, but especially women weren't even welcomed at the VA because they just were like, women weren't in Vietnam. And she was like, I was there for 2 tours. And they were like, well, you weren't in combat. But she was shot at.
Yeah.
And, and then she saw like the horrors of war.
Yeah.
So that was really interesting. And it ends at when the Vietnam War Memorial in DC is opened. And that's where it ends. And I've seen that when we went to ALA. It was the first time I've been to DC. And I saw that wall and I knew what I was going for, but there's still something different about going.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't really have anybody in my family who died in the Vietnam War, but just the enormity of seeing all those names on the wall was breathtaking.
It really is.
Not in a good way.
No. Did you see there's also after they did the main, what people think of as the main Vietnam memorial, off to the side, there's one for women who served as in nursing capacities.
I missed that.
It's just I don't want to say just, it's a statue of, I forget if it's 2 or 3 people, but one of them is a woman who is helping a soldier who has been wounded. And it's a relatively new addition. I say new, it's not like new. I'm old, but it was not something that they originally had planned to put in. And it was because women later on were like, we were there. We were right there with the guys who were fighting and dying. So we would like a little bit of recognition, please. So they did finally put together a memorial for them. Yeah.
It was really, really interesting for that. Just learning about, things. I was born, I think, right when it was ending. So I don't know. And my dad was too young to serve. So my grandpa was before Vietnam. So we kind of missed that whole era.
Mm-hmm.
But it was really interesting to learn all those things about the women's perspective and just all the things that the women did. And then especially how they were treated after.
Yeah. That's really just so interesting. It's
a great read. Highly recommend. I listen to it. I'm a big audiobook listener.
Okay.
I'm a busy mom with 3 kids and a librarian. And so I listen like in the car it's a great way to get like cleaning done that I don't want to do in an audiobook, cooking dinner. So it was a good listen.
Okay.
Or anybody's an audio listener.
Nice. Love it. Well, thank you so much. Not only did you bring us great books, you brought us a great lesson, and you brought us just yourself, which is you are a great person. So I really appreciate you
Thanks,
coming to
Steve.
share and taking the time, because you're on summer vacation, and hopefully we're all going to be going on summer vacation soon, but
The end is near, my friend.
the end is near. So thank you so much. I truly appreciate it.
I really appreciate you asking me. This is fun.
Don't miss the show notes for this episode to see the resources Katie shared. Thank you for checking out the first season of the SLLN podcast. If you've enjoyed listening half as much as I've enjoyed making it, we've all had a real good time. If you've enjoyed the podcast, I'd love to hear from you. You can email me at schoolliblearning@gmail.com, that's schoolliblearning@gmail.com, or say hi on Blue Sky or Twitter. And if you have an idea, a question, or a lesson you want to share, or you know someone who might, let me know. Until next season, be good, be safe, and be well.